All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're not just going to look at a famous plane. We're going to get under the hood. We're going to take it apart piece by piece and really understand the engineering brilliance that made the Supermarine Spitfire a true legend.
I mean, just look at it. That silhouette is one of the most recognizable shapes in the history of flight, isn't it? Even today, all these decades later, the Spitfire is an absolute icon. That shape, it just screams history, elegance, and pure, raw power.
So we all know it's famous, right? But why? What was it from an engineer's perspective that made this thing a masterpiece? Well, the answer isn't some simple blueprint. It's a whole story. A story about failures, about flashes of genius, and this absolutely relentless drive to be faster, to be higher, and to be better than anything else in the sky.
And believe it or not, that story starts with a total flop. On the left, that's the Supermarine Type 224, the Spitfire's predecessor. And honestly, it was kind of a dud. Just look at the difference. You've got these clunky gull wings on the 224 versus the Spitfire's slick elliptical wings. An open cockpit versus a modern enclosed one. Fixed landing gear that just hangs out in the wind versus gear that tucks away cleanly. The Spitfire wasn't an upgrade. It was a complete do-over, built from the ground up around the brand new and much more powerful Merlin engine. We're talking a revolutionary jump here.
And this is what that revolution looked like in metal. This is the prototype K554. It first took to the sky in March of 1936, and you can just see it, can't you? The elegance, the sense of purpose in every single line. This was it. This was designer R.J. Mitchell's vision come to life. So, the chief test pilot, a guy they called Mutt Summers, he takes it up for its very first flight, just 8 minutes long, and when he lands, his entire report is basically 2 words: don't touch anything. Just let that sink in for a second. The very first time anyone has flown this brand new complex machine, the feedback is, it's perfect. The balance, the feel, they knew right then and there they had something incredibly special on their hands.
You know what? The government agreed. They were so blown away that they ordered 310 of them on the spot. They didn't even wait for a formal report to be filed. So the design? It's a home run. But that incredible success creates this huge new problem. Okay, great. Now, how on earth do you build hundreds of these complicated precision machines?
And here's where the dream slammed into the brick wall of reality. Supermarine was a pretty small company, and they promised they could crank out 5 planes a week. The reality? It took them almost 2 years just to deliver the very first one. You see, the Spitfire's design was so advanced, with its stress skin construction, where the skin itself is part of the structure, it was just too complex for the way they were used to building things.
So they built this massive new factory to solve the problem, but even that struggled. You can see the turning point right here in these numbers. Look at this. It's 1940, the height of the Battle of Britain. In June, they only managed to build 10 planes. But by September, that number jumps to 56. They were finally figuring out how to build this thing at scale, and not a moment too soon.
But of course, just as they get things rolling, a new threat. In September 1940, the Luftwaffe bombs the main factories, trying to deliver a knockout blow to Spitfire production. The response, though, was absolutely ingenious. They just spread it out. They started building parts in random garages, little workshops, anywhere they could find space across the country. Then they'd truck the pieces to satellite airfields for final assembly. It must have been a logistical nightmare, but it worked. It made the production line almost impossible to destroy.
Okay, so we've covered the manufacturing drama. Now let's get to the real heart of the Spitfire's magic, that unbelievable elliptical wing. It's beautiful, no doubt about it. But that beauty wasn't just for show. Its elegance was a direct result of pure engineering function. You know, the team's aerodynamicist Beverly Shenstone really said it best. The ellipse wasn't an artistic choice. It was just the most efficient shape for slicing through the air with the least amount of drag. But, and this is the really genius part, that shape also solved a massive practical puzzle.
Think about the contradictions here. The wing needed to be super thin for speed, but it also had to be thick enough to hold the landing gear, the machine guns, and all the ammo. The solution included an innovative main spar made of 5 tubes that fit inside each other, making it incredibly strong but also light. And, this is so clever, it had something called washout. This meant the part of the wing closest to the body was designed to stall before the wingtips. For the pilot, this meant they'd feel a little vibration, a buffet, as a warning, long before the plane went into a deadly spin. It wasn't just fast and strong, it was smart and safe.
But no design is perfect, and the Spitfire had one big Achilles heel, especially when it went up against its nemesis, the Messerschmitt Bf-109. See, the Spitfire's engine used a carburetor. When the pilot pushed the nose down hard into a dive, creating negative G-force, the fuel would slosh away and the engine would cut out. The Bf-109, on the other hand, had fuel injection, so it could just nose over and dive away, leaving the Spitfire pilot behind, sputtering.
The solution wasn't some huge, complicated redesign. It was a tiny piece of beautifully simple engineering. An engineer named Beatrice Tilly Schilling came up with what the pilots called Miss Schilling's orifice. It was literally just a little metal washer with a tiny hole in it, stuck in the fuel line. It acted like a tiny dam, preventing the engine from flooding. It didn't solve the problem completely, but it was enough. It gave Spitfire pilots just enough time to follow the 109s into a dive. A tiny piece of metal that completely changed the game in a dogfight.
You know, maybe the Spitfire's greatest engineering trick was just how adaptable it was. The basic airframe was so tough, so well designed, that it could just keep taking more and more power. You can see the evolution right here. On the left, an early Spitfire with its Merlin engine. On the right, a later model. They somehow managed to cram the much bigger and more powerful Rolls-Royce Griffin engine into that same basic design. It's the same plane, really, just with a monster truck engine shoved into it.
And if you want to see what monster truck engine means in numbers, check this out. The original Merlin was already impressive at over 1,000 horsepower, but the later Griffin engines, they were pushing over 2,300 horsepower. That's a 127% increase in power. They more than doubled the horsepower in the same basic airframe. This is what kept the Spitfire at the cutting edge for the entire war.
So what does all that extra power get you? Well, it gets you to the edge of the sound barrier. In a test dive in 1944, a Spitfire hit Mach 0.92, 92% of the speed of sound, in a plane with a propeller. I mean, that's not supposed to be possible. It's the fastest anyone has ever gone in a piston-engine aircraft, pushing the laws of physics to their absolute limit.
And this is the aftermath. This is what it looks like when you push a design to its breaking point. The forces were so violent that the entire propeller and gearbox ripped clean off the front of the plane. The pilot actually blacked out, but somehow managed to land safely. And look at the wings. They were permanently bent backwards by the speed. This isn't just a picture of a damaged plane. It's physical proof of just how incredibly strong that original design was.
And here's the real kicker. Spitfire test pilot Jeffrey Quill said it best. He pointed out that the Spitfire was still controllable at speeds where the early jet fighters were becoming unstable. Let that sink in. A propeller plane designed in the mid-1930s was handling better at the edge of the sound barrier than the first generation of jets. That is just an extraordinary tribute to the genius of the original engineering.
So let's just recap this wild story. It started as a failure. It overcame a production nightmare. Its biggest flaw was patched with a simple, brilliant little washer. And its core design was so fundamentally sound that it could handle more than double its original power and touch the speed of sound. The entire history of the Spitfire is a story of overcoming impossible challenges with brilliant engineering. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. When you look at all of it, the performance, the adaptability, the sheer longevity, was this the ultimate piston engine fighter?